be reading in Galatians chapter 2, verse 1. And so the first part of this says, 14 years after that first visit, Barnabas and I went up to Jerusalem and took Titus with us. And what he's talking about when he says 14 years after that first visit, Paul went to Jerusalem and met with Peter, James, and John 14 years before this was written, and he told them what God had told him to do, which was to go and preach to the non-Jews. And Peter, James, and John heard his story, heard how he was converted to Christianity, and they agreed, and they said, yeah, Paul, you are a missionary. We're commissioning you as a missionary to the non-Jews, and we're going to stay here in Jerusalem, and we're going to preach to the Jews, because that's how God has organized this. And so Paul went out and did his missionary work. And this says, 14 years after that first visit, Barnabas and I went up to Jerusalem and took Titus with us. I went to clarify with them what had been revealed to me. At that time, I placed before them exactly what I was preaching to the non-Jews. I did this in private with the leaders, those held in esteem by the church, so that our concern would not become a controversial public issue marred by ethnic tensions. And so what I want to point out here is the way that Paul handled this situation. There was a possible controversy that he wanted to talk with them about. But he says that what he did was, first of all, I placed before them exactly what I was preaching to the non-Jews. He told them the whole truth. He didn't try to hide what he was doing. He went to the leaders and he told them everything that he had been preaching, because he wanted everything to be out in the open with the leadership. But listen, it says that I did this in private with the leaders. So he didn't just go and tell his friends about it. He didn't just go and tell the normal church people about it, because that would have caused problems within the church. So what he did was he went straight to the leadership and he told them the whole truth. But they did it in private. And so it's important when we have issues within the church that we take them to the leadership, and we are open about everything, but we do it in private so that we don't cause other people to mistrust the church. And so that's what happened there. But then in the same chapter, let's go down here. I'm looking. Verse 13, later, when Peter came to Antioch, I had a face-to-face confrontation with him because he was clearly out of line. Here's the situation. Earlier, before certain persons had come from James, Peter regularly ate with the non-Jews. But when a conservative group came from Jerusalem, he cautiously pulled back and put as much distance as he could manage between himself and his non-Jewish friends. And that's how fearful he was of the conservative Jewish clique that's been pushing the old system of circumcision. Unfortunately, the rest of the Jews in the Antioch church joined in that hypocrisy, so that even Barnabas was swept along in the charade. But when I saw they were not maintaining a steady, straight course according to the message, I spoke up to Peter in front of all of them. So here, Paul was led by the Holy Spirit to take a different tact in dealing with a problem in the church. And so the story here is that Peter, normally in Antioch, had been eating with and being friends with non-Jews, and he wasn't observing all of the Jewish customs. But when some Jews were coming up from Jerusalem, he changed what he was doing, and he kind of pushed his non-Jewish friends away because he didn't want to be seen with them when the Jewish people from Jerusalem came up. And Paul saw this, and he realized that this was wrong. And in this case, he actually confronted him in public. And so it's not always white and black, or yes, you always confront people in private, or you always confront them in public. In this case, it was something that was church-wide. All the people in the church were beginning to do this thing, which could have caused a lot of problems and caused enmity between the non-Jews and the missionaries. So Paul fixed it right then, and he did this in public. So I guess my point is, sometimes you need to go do things in public, and sometimes you need to do things in private. So how do we know the difference? And the difference is, or the way that we know what to do, is because we have to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. So I don't know if that's very helpful, but it was an interesting thing to study today.